can do a playoff push, right?
Right.
Or a championship push, right on the cusp. Or a team that's, building, for their big playoff push and could be, that mystery wild card Super Bowl winner. But outside of that, I think everybody's looking at it for the risk to reward ratio, he could be of a detriment. I mean, if you have a team that's right there, do you risk throwing off the chemistry of the whole team?
Yeah.
Team with younger players, just say, obviously this wouldn't happen, but, someone like the Chiefs or somebody, who have a bunch of good young players, or the Saints, they have a bunch of good young players on the team. I mean, do you risk hurting those players to have someone like AD, or do you go down 2 spots or 1 or 2 spots in wide receiver, pay a heck of a lot less in compensation, and still have a receiver who can put up, maybe not the same level, but you can bank on a high level, and also you can bank on the fact that your culture won't change. I mean, that's huge.
Right. It just the number of teams that were interested, that were reported with true interest and actually in actual real trade discussions was so small. The Redskins, the Titans, the Packers, the Bills, and the Raiders. That's 5 teams out of, as I said before, you got 32 teams in the league. One of them he's played for. The other one, he was pending trade. There was a pending trade for him. There was discussions about him being sent there, and he decided not to go there. So now you got 30 teams. Out of those 30 teams, 5 or 4, I should say, not including Buffalo, are interested. And now the Packers just came out and said, we're not interested in him whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
What team would come out and say they're not interested in whatsoever if he didn't do all this bluster and dyeing his mustache blonde and all that stuff?
Fur coat on the sidelines at the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, this is a classic case. And to all the people that, are on Twitter right now that are saying, oh, Buffalo swung and missed. Buffalo's a dump. The city, who would want to play there? There's nothing to do there. This ancient Willis McGahee take. It's actually an ancient Jim Kelly take, because Jim Kelly didn't want to play here. LaShawn McCoy didn't want to play here. And in hindsight, they probably look back on that and regret even feeling that way. Granted, they got paid at the end of the day to stay here and to come here, but Antonio Brown would have got paid too.
Absolutely.
He just robbed himself of an opportunity.
Yeah, even Phillips.
Right.
Just resigned, and a big part of it was I didn't want to come to Buffalo, but once I got here, I was sold.
Thurman Thomas said there's that story where Thurman Thomas gets drafted here, and he's like, Buffalo, oh, I'm going to be able to take my wife shopping in New York City. He didn't even know where Buffalo was. He didn't even know where, and then they touch down, and he's like, this is it? I mean, and now he looks back on that and kind of laughs and is like one of the few players of that group that is still here, that has invested his time in starting businesses here and stuff like that. So I'm not even going to entertain that. I'm not even going to look at the people that are saying, oh, Buffalo's a dump and this city sucks and our city sucks and that's why, we didn't get this guy. No, we didn't get this guy because the guy is literally sabotaging his NFL career. That's why they didn't get him.
And without talking about AB right now, but those same people who make those comments are the same people who will watch Buffalo transform from being, this almost cancer, if you will. And they'll watch it over the years transform, right? We got Herbert there going and this and that. And then once we start to get big, they'll be the same person going, man, what happened to the old school Buffalo way of life, the small town. It's like they're the trolls that are going to say whatever they have to say to not agree with what's going on, But people who understand it know we're growing. They know that our smaller, or whatever you want to call it, the mid-size appeal that we have, once people get here, you can tell by people like Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly and Steve Tasker and, Andre Reed. Like, these people, I'm sorry. Yeah. These people, they have an option to take their money and their business and, their what do you want to call it, the sponsorships and everything elsewhere.
Right.
But they don't. And that's a testament to other people,
I just can't believe that people are essentially bashing the Bills based on the fact that they didn't get a player who didn't want to come here. Yeah. Why would any NFL team want to pursue someone who doesn't want to be there?
Right.
At that point, once they realized that he didn't want to be there, that's when the trade discussions died.
Yeah.
That's
the whole reason that they have this massive interview and, process is so that they can see the mindset of the player. It's not to, talk over dollars and cents at the beginning. It's literally like, I need to find out the heartbeat of this person, and are they going to work with and for us? Do they even want to work with and for us? It doesn't make a difference if you have the perfect system for someone to prosper. If they don't want to work within it, then okay, they don't want to work within it. And I actually feel like, realistically, the Raiders may be the team that will pull the trigger on him.
Right.
Because I think
I've thought that from the start. Yeah.
Because I think Gruden feels like he's got the mentality and the flexibility to deal with him, and in honesty, out of anybody that I see, it's probably the most true. And he also reflects that same attitude that Oakland has always had.
Right.
Sort of the outcast, but talent through the roof. And, I just see that as the fit. And I think in most people's eyes, it would make the most sense from a football and almost like a reporting standpoint.
Well, they have whatever team gets them. The match that the Steelers are looking for is a team that has draft picks and a team that has cap space.
Yeah,
and that's why that was such a big trade idea for Buffalo, because they do have cap space, they do have picks, but Oakland has more picks than anybody based on the Amari Cooper and the Khalil Mack trade, and and they have cap space. So I always, when I first heard that the Raiders were interested, I thought it made sense. And I mean, if he alienates this next trade, then it's literally a case of someone who does not want to play anymore. It's not a case of Le'Veon Bell sitting out a year to get more money. It's a case of Antonio Brown is so tired of the rigmarole of the NFL, he doesn't want to be a teammate. And if you don't want to be a teammate in the NFL, your career is as good as dead. There's no, you'll get squashed. The NFL has, and it's in a way, me saying this is kind of odd because I hate to say it, but the NFL has more power than any single player. They could walk away from any player. They squash their stars on a yearly. Look at Tom Brady. They even tried to squash him, and he's the biggest star they've had ever.
If he hadn't won the Super Bowl, they would have been successful at squashing him.
Right. Lorenzo Alexander, or actually, let me start off. Sage Rosenfels in 2002, he tweeted, in 2002, I was entering the free agent market. I, along with some friends, ranked the 32 franchises based on best places to live, long-term, and organizations to play for. He said, Buffalo ranked 32 on my list. Then, the future mayor of Buffalo, Lorenzo Alexander, he said, thought the same, but the people up here are awesome and the city is underrated. Have enjoyed every minute minus that polar vortex.
Right.
So, it is what it is. They're going to get criticized no matter what because they're the small city of the NFL. And that is the reality. That you can say. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to go for as many players to make their team better. Because this is the sport of it. This isn't about geography and all that. I mean, they're trying to make their team as best as they possibly can.
Right.
I find that so frustrating, and I can't really say I'm offended by it because I'm not surprised by it because that's what anytime a big player is linked to Buffalo, they're like, oh, he's going to the NFL's wasteland. It's like,
right.
It's just.
But it's actually pretty funny because our track record of getting players that people think should not have been looking at Buffalo, and then the results of what happens to their career, a large percentage. I don't want to throw out a number because I obviously haven't dug into it, but a large number of them have had their careers resurrected or started.
Right.
In Buffalo. Now, granted, Buffalo didn't hold them long term, but you have to, in a way, give Buffalo that credit. Like, well, these people are becoming known and getting paid. They were on the fence, if not off the radar prior to coming to Buffalo. And then they come to Buffalo and they leave and get paid.
Right. What was that?
I said that's a credit to Buffalo and, what they offer. It would be nice if we just retained more of their services.
There's been a lot of good players that they've had, as you said, like they let guys go. I mean, they drafted Marshawn Lynch. I mean,
yeah.
What more can you say than that? They've drafted really good players. Maybe if Eric Moulds was playing with Brett Favre, he'd actually probably be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. It's tough, but I think that this whole scenario that played itself out was actually a blessing in disguise because it lets teams know that hey, they are interested in some names. They are willing to make moves that they weren't known to be willing to make. I mean.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan.
Yep.
I gotta shoot. I gotta take my daughter to school.
All right. Yeah. Well, it was good talking to you, dude.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was a good buddy of mine, Samuel White, as we discussed the Antonio Brown ordeal. Oh, boy. I mean, what more can you say than that at this point? Scrolling through the Twitter feed and seeing a lot of the reactions, all negative. All negative. And the way I see it, is that this situation has only begun to play itself out for the better. And that Bills fans should actually be really excited. And all the haters and the naysayers of the city and the town and the organization, really, it's just ignorant. Plain ignorance. The way I see it, too, is, okay, let's look at sports players. If a sports player doesn't want to come to Buffalo, it's not because of the geographical location. I mean, there's other cities around the National Football League that are small that there's not a lot to do. Green Bay is one of them. It's about the pedigree that the franchise has laid out the last 15 to 20 years, and history has shown that it's not really a good pedigree. But this new regime, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, have done a lot of positive things that are being overlooked, which that's okay. I'm okay with that, because overlooking Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott is just my cup of tea, based on the fact that they're flying under the radar. So that's how I see that. And Sage Rosenfels, with this tweet in regards to the Bills being ranked last. Sage Rosenfels was terrible. So I'm very thankful that the Bills did not get Sage Rosenfels. The dude was a career journeyman and essentially a bum at the National Football League level. And I tweeted back to him, I said, probably where Buffalo had you ranked as well. So I am a little bit defensive, because this is my home. This is where, I was born and raised. And there are a lot of things that Buffalo needs work on. No doubt about that. But they've worked on a lot of things. I mean, 10 years ago, this city was completely different than what it is now. But you wouldn't realize that if you weren't here. You wouldn't know that if you weren't here. And that's how I see that. If you're not here, your perception becomes reality. And that's how I see it. The fact that Antonio Brown's team list has been dwindling ever since this entire situation played itself out. I mean, teams are literally finding reasons to back out of this. They don't want any part of this guy because of the personality and persona that he brings to the table. And it sounds so vague, but you have teams literally dropping out of the mix. Buffalo decides to move on. The Packers decide to move on. The Steelers are trying like hell to get him off their team, and they can't, due to the fact that he's just not at this point. Eric Wood with an interesting tweet. He said he would come in and be a superstar in the city, as well as be respected in the building by other players and coaches. That said, if it doesn't happen, I hope the Bills show these quotes to the guys when they show up in the spring. Use this as motivation. That's what Eric Wood did his entire career here. So it's going to be very, very intriguing to see where this ends up. But as I said from the jump, and I kind of started recording when the conversation we were in the middle of the conversation with Samuel. Ian Rappaport did his due diligence. He reported the news that was given to him that trade discussions were closing in. They were closing in on a deal. They were closing in on a deal. That was not fake news. The deal was being closed in on. Antonio Brown just didn't want to come here. And I think there are a lot of other parameters as to why a deal with Antonio Brown is complex, even outside of him wanting to play here. And I listed those on my Facebook page. So, as I said, the Bills came as close to getting AB as any other team. Let that sink in. Brandon Beane is willing to do whatever it takes to build around Josh Allen. Bills fans should be excited still. Ultimately, the Bills didn't get AB. Fans will speculate for years to come as to why. But there could have been a number of reasons. And number one, I did state AB might not have wanted to play here. 2, the Bills couldn't agree with him on an extension. 3, the Steelers have been reported by Steelers team beat writers to want present and future picks for Brown. This trade saga with Antonio Brown is messy. And, yeah, I mean, maybe Antonio Brown didn't want to play here. I think that was the majority of the reason. But if Antonio Brown is to be traded to a team, he has to re-sign with that team. He wants an extension. So all of this is just so complicated. All of this is so far from being close to being a reality. And the idea that the Steelers want present and future picks, that is everything to a team, wondering what you have to give up for a 31-year-old wide receiver. But I'm at a point where I slept very little because of this news. I didn't report the news, so I don't want that to be stated because I feel like some people try to take shots at me for no reason whatsoever by saying that I did. Nobody said that, but they're like, oh, you said it was a done deal. Everybody thought it was a done deal, you morons. Jeez. Everybody thought it was a done deal, including Ian Rappaport, including plenty of other NFL insiders. It essentially was a done deal. But for the reasons that I stated, I think the deal died. I know the deal died. And Brandon Beane coming out and saying what he said, I really have to put on my conspiracy theorist hat and say to myself, did the Buffalo Bills not want this information to get out? Was this information leaked by whoever leaked it to Ian Rappaport, and was that person a scout or a member of the Bills staff? Or was it a member of the Steelers staff? Could we potentially have a leaker situation? And I hate to put on my conspiracy theorist hat, but immediately after that trade was reported, Antonio Brown took to Instagram and said fake news. He didn't even know that it was actually a real story because he didn't know it was actually even happening. So if Antonio Brown didn't know, and he found out the same way we did, that means someone leaked it. You never, ever see a trade get reported as closing in or terms yet to be determined. Usually when a deal is done, the terms are there, the contract is there, all the information floods through. This was a trade that was being worked on that fell through. And that's it. Frankly, I'm thankful because I don't think Antonio Brown would have been a good fit here. I think he's a phenomenal player, but as do many of the other teams in the National Football League, the consensus is this guy is just losing his marbles, if you will, acting irrationally, saying things that are a little bit far-fetched and ridiculous as far as him retiring if he does not find himself in a better situation. And I think that that's really ridiculous and would make me as an NFL GM or NFL talent evaluator or scout or anyone in an NFL front office, it would make me pause and say, well, why would we want to trade for this guy if anything isn't to his liking? If the food in the team cafeteria isn't to his liking, if the team facility runs out of toilet paper, or what? I'm coming up with all these weird analogies, but if anything isn't to his liking, if his towels aren't steamed, then then he's not going to want to play here? I mean, who would want that? Who would be gung-ho for that? He's really damaging the prospects of his career actually continuing right now. The teams that were interested, as I said, there's 32 teams in the National Football League, one of which he played for. The other, he was involved in a pending trade with. That trade didn't come to fruition. So that's 2 teams, 30 teams. You have 4 teams interested beyond that. One of those teams just stepped out in Green Bay. The other, Washington, Tennessee, and Oakland. I think Oakland's the favorite. Let's just say Oakland steps out. You're looking at Washington or Tennessee. How is that situation in Washington better than Buffalo? How is the situation in Tennessee better than Buffalo? Answer is it's not, but the perception of those cities is a lot better than that of Buffalo. And that's the reality of it. More on this story as the day continues. I'll be sure to post on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page, as well as my own personal Facebook and Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. Feel free to follow me, stay up to date on all things Buffalo Bills. Take care, everybody. As we look back on this last 10 hours, we can honestly say to ourselves that this is a blessing in disguise.